Hey everyone, welcome back to What Did I Miss? Once again, I am your host, Plain and Simple Eric, and today I'm breaking down the 12th episode of the 3rd season of Discovery, titled There Is a Tide. As I mentioned in my trailer breakdown for the episode, the title comes from a quote from the play Julius Caesar, which was written by frequent Star Trek collaborator William Shakespeare. In this episode, the crew must fight to take back the ship from Osira, the head of the Emerald Chain, who has a plan of her own that she attempts to enact herself. After last week's episode left me kind of underwhelmed, I was very pleased this week with a well-paced episode that allowed for some great dialogue between characters and also showed how complicated and nuanced the season's villain, Osira, is. I thought it was smart to not reference the cause of the burn hardly at all as well, almost like the writers knew there would be some trepidation from the fan base after the reveal. I also thought that Anthony Rapp as Paul Stamets had his best scenes of a season that was already pretty good for him, and really showed how far his character has grown since getting Dr. Culber back from the dead and gaining Adira as an adopted child. We also had to say goodbye to a character and actor who fans had quickly become huge fans of, but I will get into that bummer in the spoiler section. I also liked that it seemed that Michael took a back seat a bit in this episode, which allowed characters like the aforementioned Stamets and Asira, but also Admiral Vance, some more screen time, which they used to make the story much fuller. Lastly, and possibly because Discovery's writers knew about when this show would air, I think the episode makes some pretty strong references to two beloved Christmas-time movies, one of which I make sure to watch every year. But all in all, I thought Discovery really came back with a good quality episode that may have washed the bad taste out of our mouths from the last one, and given hope that the season will finish on a high note and end as the best season of Discovery so far. Speaking of the last episode, I think the trailer gave away a huge spoiler that I will go over in my video for that trailer and sneak peek scene in a couple of days. So hit the subscribe bell if you want to be notified by YouTube when that comes out, so you are not left thinking, what did I miss? Okay, going forward, there will be spoilers for this episode, as well as this season of Discovery, other references to Star Trek storylines, and a comic science fiction film from 1987. The episode starts with Osira playing out a Trojan horse-style gambit by having her ship, the Viridian, fire on the Discovery and be seemingly in distress with her and her crew already on board. As I mentioned in a prior video, the color Viridian is actually a dark green pigment, which is a pretty fitting name for her ship. Vance seems to know something is up and at first is unwilling to drop the shield surrounding Starfleet headquarters to let them in. On the ship, Osira has almost complete control of the Discovery besides the spore drive and what is described as a small bit of code that won't allow itself to be deleted, which is displayed as what I believe is another film from Buster Keaton, as Zara, or the artist formerly known as the Sphere Data, has shown to be fond of the actor/director. If anyone is a fan of this era of film, please let me know in the comments which film of his this is from. I would love to know because I'm sure that it has something to do with the events that take place here. Osira instructs her crewmen to turn it off, whose species I could not place, but a couple fans point out in the comments of my trailer video that it seems to be the same species of one of the characters from the Children of Mars Star Trek short. We then see the bridge crew in the mess hall under guard, and after Tilly offers herself up for the safety of the crew, Jake Weber returns as Zara from the first episode of the season. I really like seeing him again because I immediately thought of how ironic it was that Giorgio wanted to kill him but Saru would not, and now neither of them are on the Discovery, nor do they have to deal with him now. Even Zara makes a comment to Tilly that she should have killed him when she had the chance. I was a little worried when he walked in with Rin that Rin was going to be revealed as working with the chain, but thankfully that was not the case. We then cut to Book and Burnham still trying to catch up with the Discovery on their way to Starfleet headquarters. They are in something that Book calls the Courier Network, which seems to be a subspace conduit, and earlier in the season, I hypothesized that these were the same conduits that the Xindi used in the show Enterprise. During that series, large ships could traverse them, but now, since they are filled with wreckage, it makes sense that only a small, maneuverable ship like Book's could make the trip. Michael calls out seeing a Wanderer-class ship, which is interesting because that class has been referenced before in The Next Generation, but it was never seen, and is known to be an Orion smuggling vessel. Once again, we get to see Book's ship jump into different configurations to avoid damage, and I just love its design. It seems like something I've never seen before, and that is hard to do. Book mentions that Asira played the same trick on Benthos 4, which is a planet briefly mentioned on Voyager, and I only mention it because it means that somehow the Emerald Chain has reached all the way to the Delta Quadrant at this point. Vance has to let the Discovery in, but orders a secure escort just as Book's ship emerges from subspace. The ship is able to crash right into the shuttle bay of Discovery while her shields are down. His ship seemed to take some big damage, so I hope it's salvageable. I can't take another Razor Crest. Inside the ship, we see Osira and Zara on their way to the spore drive. The fact that Zara's hand has been turned black and that he wears a black glove is probably not by accident, as the Black Hand is commonly associated with extortion, as many crime syndicates have taken on the moniker that do just that. During this episode, while Osira does try to make herself and the Emerald Chain appear to be saviors, in the end they really are just like any other type of criminal or political organization that rules by fear and force. Osira meets Aurelio there, who seems to be a scientist and trusted confidant. Aurelio in Latin means golden, which I think is curious because the color gold, while sometimes associated with wealth, is also associated with wonder and magic, which seem to be the part this character is playing, who even remarks that the spore drive was created during the golden age of science. The actor playing Aurelio is named Kenneth Michel, and he has appeared in the past as 3 separate Klingon characters. In 2020, he revealed that he has been confined to a wheelchair due to Lou Gehrig's disease. And if you'd like to learn more about him and a charity he supports named IMALS, I have put those links in the description of this video. He and Osira seem to have a close relationship, as he seems to be the first person Osira has addressed with any respect, and even plays an Andorian opera for him while he works. The irony is that opera is also a big part of Stamets' life, since he met Dr. Culber due to him humming Caecilian opera and then playing that same opera to get Hugh to come back to him in the Mycelial network. Book and Burnham devise a plan to take the ship back, and Book gives her a device to mask her signature that he got at the Theskian exchange. The Theskians have not been shown on screen, but were referenced in the TNG novel Metamorphosis and are said to look much like Andorians except with red and yellow fur. Once again though, Book is Johnny on the spot with just the right piece of tech to help out. Now I'm starting to think that he is not a spy, but perhaps rather working for the Department of Temporal Investigations and is not from this time period. Even after they say I love you for the first time, Book looks away like something is wrong. Perhaps he is realizing that he cannot stay with her after this mission is over. I know a couple of you have brought this theory up before in the comments. I'm starting to think you are right, but let me know. Do you think Book is on the level, or is he someone else? And if so, who? Zara and his regulators arrive at the ship and grab Book. I really like that they kept with the Old West motif they established with Zara in the first episode and call his crew regulators, much like the Lincoln County regulators from the American Old West, and more specifically the story of Billy the Kid, which was immortalized in the Young Guns movies where his group went by said name. We then cut to Michael as she assaults and subdues Joey Fatone, who is now one of the members of the Admiral Chain and is trying to steal a badge off a memorial. He stabs her in the leg. Did anyone else start to get Die Hard vibes from the scene and the rest of Michael's journey in this episode? The way she strangles the guy with her legs reminded me of how John McClane took out one of the terrorists at Nakatomi Plaza, and the shot of blood on the floor behind her also reminded me of the scene after he got his feet cut up. She even gets his communicator, much like how John McClane is able to keep tabs on Hans and company after stealing a walkie-talkie. Then she tries to communicate with someone on the outside using the communicator, in this case her mother, much like McClane did as well. Asira arrives at Starfleet headquarters to meet with Admiral Vance. In case you are wondering what type of alien was with her, I believe that is an Ulsulnus, which is a new alien developed for Discovery. I'm starting to wonder if the guards in full gear are actually Breen. When one speaks this episode, it sort of sounds like the voice, although we never heard them speak English before. Back on Discovery, the bridge crew are able to attack their captors after using Morse code to distract them. Morse code is a version of nonverbal communication developed by the military in the 19th century and has been used many times on Star Trek, most notably in Star Trek V by Montgomery Scott during another jailbreak. Asira and Vance continue to speak, and it looks like Asira is ready to make a deal. She tells Vance that she wants the Emerald Chain to join the Federation and use her well-funded resources to replicate the spore drive technology. When Vance asks her why, she explains that she knows that the Federation stands for hope, and despite her advances, the Emerald Chain will never be seen like that. This is more of a standard business takeover than a joining if you think about it. When a large company buys a smaller one, they usually do it so that they can absorb their customers without the customers even knowing that they're giving their money to another company. Your standard wolf in sheep's clothing tale. And while Vance does hear her out, I think from the beginning he understands it for what it is. Back at the spore drive, Aurelio removes Stamets' mental restraints. They begin to speak, and Stamets notices that Aurelio has children due to a symbolic piercing known to Orion culture. At this point, I'm starting to think that his partner may be Osira, but that is not made clear. Stamets also reveals that he has a partner and a child, referring to Adira as such for the first time. As I continue to mention, I love the Space Dads, and I hope the story continues for many seasons and does not end in tragedy. Aurelio makes a comment about growing tardigrade cells and states that fidelity is always the issue with replication, and that growth marries the fidelity of a copy with the vitality of new beginnings. This may sound like a lot of hot wind, but it is basically summing up the theme of this episode and the intention of the Emerald Chain. Fidelity means loyalty, and he is saying that with replication there is no loyalty because replication is not natural growth, and that if you can convince them with the vitality or possibility of a new beginning, they can insidiously replicate loyalty. Much like how the Emerald Chain is trying to convince the Federation that they are a symbol of a new beginning, just so that they can use their image to grow the reach of their own empire. The regulators are still searching for Michael in the Jeffries tubes, named of course after Matt Jeffries, the designer of the original USS Enterprise. It may be the lighting, but the Andorian that they show searching for her look to be a very pale shade of blue, which may make them an Anar, which are a subspecies of Andorian who were introduced on the show Enterprise and were known to display telepathic abilities. Zara taunts Michael on the communicator in a very Hans Gruber way, as she is able to get rid of the person chasing her by opening an airlock and jettisoning her into space. After Michael does this, she taunts Zara by saying he is going to need more regulators, which I can't help but think is a reference to this line from Die Hard.
Oh, Christ. We're gonna need some more FBI guys, I guess.
In the next scene, we see Osira and Admiral Vance speaking, and they start talking about apples. This scene was one of my favorite scenes in the episode, and perhaps all year, as I love how Vance calmly tells Osira that all replicated food is made from poop. I guess we now know why they never talk about bathrooms on Star Trek, and I think I would want Neelix on my ship more now than ever. Asira seems to be making concessions, but interwoven into each is an allowance towards the Emerald Chain, like the legitimization of trade within their exchanges. Back on the ship, Tilly rallies the bridge crew and creates a plan, and with Rin's help, they are able to confuse the ship's sensors and begin to take back the ship. Zara calls out Code Alpha 5 when he realizes this, and am I the only one that heard cleanup on Aisle 5 when he said that and chuckled? Stamets tries to make Aurelio understand who Asira really is, and Aurelio explains that Asira is responsible for him surviving. This is the beginning of Anthony Rapp taking over this episode, and they really have made his character very compelling. Michael enters the room and stuns Aurelio and tries to save Stamets. She tells him that they need to leave because of his connection to the Spore Drive, but Stamets refuses to, especially after he learns that Adira is in the Verbia Nebula. Back at the Starfleet, Asira makes a comment about who the hologram is in real life, and Vance mentions that it is not based on one person. The emergency medical holograms shown in Voyager and Deep Space Nine were modeled after actual people, with the first version being based on Louis Zimmerman, the engineer who designed it, and Dr. Julian Bashir was also considered for a future model. Vance tells Asira that they cannot sign the treaty unless she herself surrenders to justice. This is really smart on his part, because he can probably smell the bull replicated food that she is trying to pull with this treaty, and after he states this, she storms off. Asira arrives back on Discovery and meets everyone on the bridge. She tells Rin to fix the sensors, but he shows that he will no longer bend to her. Book tries to save his life by telling her where the dilithium planet is, but she kills Rin and demands the truth serum be used on Book anyway. I'm sad to see Rin go, as he not only was an interesting character, but the actor, Noah Averbach-Katz, is a really big Star Trek fan, and I've seen him communicate with fans online many times. I think he may even watch these videos, and Noah, if you are watching, you played a great role and a lot of people are sad to see you go. Michael gets Stamets off the ship by blowing a hole in it and jettisoning him out while he is covered in a force field. There are a lot of similarities between this scene and Ariam's death scene last season, and Michael shows some character growth as she is able to make the hard call this time. The bridge crew is able to take the armory, and while they are there, they are approached by the Dot 23 robots we have seen all year. It appears that Zora was able to hide within these robots, and one displays the black and white scene that was shown earlier. The robots to me are a reference to the movie Batteries Not Included, which was a charming movie released around Christmas in 1987 that had to do with aliens in the form of small robots contacting a group of elderly people. Not only do the Dot 23 robots' heads already sort of look like the robots from the movie, but their eyes have now changed colors and are now green, blue, and red, just like the robots in the movie. In the end of the movie, the apartment building the elderly people are living in gets demolished, and the robots are able to rebuild it, which may be a clue as to how the Discovery goes back to looking the way it did during the short trek Calypso, which has been a sore spot with fans since the ship received a refit. Well, that was everything I saw, but you let me know, what did I miss? Let me know in the comments if there was anything you noticed that I did not touch on. Also, I just released a video about the upcoming WandaVision series on Disney+, and I'm very excited for it, and we'll be doing videos on once the show comes out, so be sure to check out that link in the comments. If you'd like to support the channel, hit that like button and check out my merch and Patreon pages, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?